Pinellas County Sheriff's Office attacked my daughter and I while we were just enjoying a day at the pool for no reason other than to desperately try to silence me before I could report their misconduct. These deputies were caught on camera shoving a gun in my 5-year-old daughter's face for no reason, and they can't seem to back up why they were there now that this has occurred and they know they were caught on camera. The video evidence is damning enough against these guys, but only the worst bootlickers on earth at this point can really try and justify anything that they did. The common questions I get are, what did you do to bring the cops there? So let's start with that one. I didn't do anything. Everything was kicked off by fraudulent petitions for Baker Act mental health evaluations, and the cops acted on them like idiots, and then it blew up in their face and they created their own chain of misconduct attached to my ex-wife's actions. So there was no crime ever committed, no crime ever suspected, and no crime that I was ever charged with at all. And that was not due to lack of trying either. After this raid was completed, I was cuffed and detained, and they started to coerce me with other unsavory methods. Let's call it torture. And then they broke into my home using a fraudulent warrant. That is proven due to proof of service, timeline issues, and the fact that I was never even served a red flag order in the first place. There was no reason for me to be considered a suspected felon and for them to enter my home. They found the weapons, so why wasn't I charged? Because it was a criminal operation to begin with. Now let's get back to the video itself, because it looks like how most people would imagine a violent kidnapping to look. It's almost indistinguishable other than the fact that these guys are wearing police vests and have badges. That doesn't mean it's not a crime. But there's so many things happening in this video that go against regulations, go against normal police procedures, and just federal law, so let's break it down. So first things first, let's talk about the premeditation and surveillance. These guys, I think, accidentally leaked a surveillance report and the CAD logs for it showing that there was 12 detectives and deputies surveilling me and my daughter for some reason, even though there was no crime suspected, no warrants ever produced, at least before they did this stuff. But there was no reason for them to be doing this. And there's no legitimate reason why a person that's being Baker acted or pulled in for an emergency mental health evaluation should be under surveillance. That kind of goes exactly against the idea that it's an urgent, exigent circumstance. If you can surveil me for a day leading up to the time that you hit us at the pool, it kind of shows that there's no pressing danger, because nothing happened in that 24-hour period that would have shown you I was neglectful to my child or that I was dangerous to myself or others, or else they would have moved. They didn't. They chose a specific time because it lined up with me exposing certain things on the internet. Now, second, let's go into the fact that the number 3 man in the stack that emerged from my apartment gym is carrying a loaded firearm at the low ready. A Baker Act is supposed to be least restrictive measures and falls under mental health law. There is absolutely zero reason possible why there would ever be deadly force authorized unless something really went wrong after proper service. But if you also look, they have no warrant, no order, no paperwork at all of any sort either. So they are simultaneously rising to deadly force by having firearms out, ready, and pointing at my head and my daughter. And then second, they have no legal paperwork of any sort to show that they have any authority to be there. So that's a twofer from hell for these guys. That is 100% probable cause of a crime. Now let's get into the fact that they don't even say a word before just attacking me and my daughter. That is not normal police procedure, and that's not how this is supposed to go. A Baker Act is a civil service situation where they're supposed to show you paperwork, let you read it, let you sign it to show that you actually received it, and then take you. None of this happened. Nobody says a single word to me before they start attacking. That means that they had no legal authority to be there. A lot of people have been telling me, oh, you should have just complied. You traumatized your daughter by raising your voice at the cops. First off, what should I have complied with? There was no commands, there was no order shown, there was no legal authority ever produced in this entire situation. And now that it is completed and they know there's a video of their crimes, they are not defending themselves in any way, shape, or form through press releases, in the courts, legal defenses, nothing. There's no attempt to defend themselves for their actions here. And my screaming about being kidnapped is not resisting. You can yell as loud as you want in a cop's face as long as you're not threatening them. But the reality of what was happening there is I knew there was most likely going to be a camera running because I told everybody on my apartment complex to be on lookout. They saw these detectives circling around my apartment complex and harassing the hell out of me and Lorelai for days leading up to this. It was nonstop. Constant harassing phone calls, knocks on the door, circling around the complex with 5 to 10 vehicles at a time parked just solely to harass me. But since I knew that video would be rolling, I was screaming out the crime that was in progress. Notice how I'm saying, this is a kidnapping, and I'm screaming to the witnesses off to the side on the pool, and they have no response for it. The only logical response from these officers, if it wasn't a kidnapping or a crime in progress, would be to produce a warrant and slow down and back up and stop with the excessive force. But they didn't do that. They continued to escalate and escalate and escalate until they eventually tased me while soaking wet right in front of my daughter. They can't produce a reason for why that is. There's no resisting that was actually happening. I was claiming that it was a kidnapping in progress, stay away from me and my daughter, and they never denied it. They just kept attacking, exactly like violent criminals would do. And when they had finally tased me, they already had 6 cops on me. One of them had his knee on my neck. There was 6 people manhandling me all at the same time. I was screaming that they were trying to kill me, which is exactly what they were there to do. They didn't tase me because I was a danger to them or actually resisting. They tased me so that there was less repetition of the attempted murder claims so that witnesses could repeat it later on. But then they also never took any witness statements from the people at the pool. Most likely because they didn't want that on record. Now let's get into the fact that the officer that pointed the weapon directly at my head and in my daughter's face is the one that's also chasing her around the pool. That is so far against regulation, it is absolutely criminal, and it is. If he was the one that was going to be using force and escalating the situation, he should have been nowhere near the child. That is extremely trauma-inducing, and it was. They were supposed to have a Department of Children and Families agent there to receive the child and get her out of harm's way as quick as possible as soon as this all started. That did not happen. Nor did DCF ever hear about the violence that occurred at the pool, or my ex-wife for that matter. The first time that anybody other than myself and the police knew that there was this ultra-violence that occurred at the pool was in the June 12th hearing where I hit them all sideways with it. I let them all set their stories 100% and really feel out where they wanted this whole thing to shake out, how they wanted it to work out, I guess. So they solidified their stories, and then I put that video into evidence in a court hearing, and everybody started acting spooked. Everybody. Nobody from the police told anybody that this level of violence occurred, and that in and of itself is admission of a crime. If this was done by proper regulations, there should have been a DCF agent in the stack, or CPS, whatever you call it in your state. They should have peeled off immediately, and since there was violence at the pool, she was supposed to get a mental health evaluation and a physical evaluation at the hospital immediately. That never happened. There's no evidence of any violence in their reports or any trauma being caused by the police, all so that they can keep that out of it. They didn't want anybody to know. And then the real kicker that screwed these guys from a paperwork perspective is the time of service, the proof of service timeline. With every civil service that goes out, like a restraining order, a Baker Act, red flag laws, whatever, all of these things require signatures, they require service, and they require proof of that too, to show the court that the person actually has received this stuff and is actually under those orders. Without that happening, there's no legal authority for any of this to be occurring. With this entire raid, they had no legal paperwork on hand. Obviously, within the video, you can see it. But the paperwork wasn't even printed off and given to the sheriff until 5:18 p.m. This was a full 30 minutes after they attacked us at the pool. They were supposed to have no idea that I was even going to be Baker acted until 5:18. So how did they know to surveil me? How did they know to be set up at the pool? How was there all this premeditation and evidence that they were set up beforehand if they never were informed? This is all showing conspiracy between multiple agencies to silence Keith. It's the only reasonable explanation at this point. If these guys weren't caught on camera, they might have some plausible deniability for some of the things that happened here, but there's still enough paperwork fraud all over the place to put them away just on that. It would have just been a little bit harder. But as you can see in this video and all the things we just laid out, there's no chance that this wasn't a crime. There are too many laws that were broken, too many regulations that were just bypassed, and absolutely no attempt to show any legal authority by explaining why they were there, producing paperwork, calming down and de-escalating. Nothing. They just attacked a disabled veteran right in front of his daughter and traumatized the hell out of her for no reason other than to silence me from reporting their misconduct to the FBI. That's the only way you can really look at it at this point. For weeks leading up to this, I was attempting to get them to hold people accountable within their own department for prior misconduct. And once that was failing and I saw that they were going to be launching an attack, I started calling the FBI. As soon as I released information that was really going to potentially put people away, like paperwork fraud, document fraud within the VA, that's when it all started. Immediately after releasing a video about a falsified writs of habeas corpus within my VA medical record, they launched the attack within hours.